Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by and welcome to a new set of videos basically. There'll be a playlist collecting them all together, so if you like the idea you can watch through some of them, all of them. None of them at the moment, it's all new, shiny new. Anyway, these will be called videos requested by my viewers. They will continue as long as I get requests for things that I can do a video on. And I thought I'd start with one. This was requested by Zula, who's been watching and commenting on my channel for as long as I can remember, so thanks a bunch for that. Thanks for staying with it. All good stuff. Long-term viewers are most welcome. I mean, obviously on a channel you're going to get a viewer that drops in on one particular video, perhaps the thumbnail caught their eye, they start watching it and think, no, that's not for me, never come back again, you know. So probably didn't leave a comment. Anyway, thanks Zula, and the request was to have a chat about the black hair type dendrobiums. Now this is a varied set of dendrobiums. I'll do a pop-up with some of the ones you're more likely to find. The ones you come across, in the main, tend to be species, which is unusual in the orchid world. It's normally the hybrids that you come across. But if you come across these, they do tend to be more about the species are more generally found. It's the sort of thing you're going to find in an orchid nursery. It's not going to turn up in a in a DIY centre or something like that. You know, it's not that type of orchid. It's going to be at a nursery or possibly on a sales table at a show or something like that. They are varied in their habitats, which means they are varied in the environments that you would need to keep them in. This is important. It is. When you're at species level, there are, I could say most species, but not all, are quite particular about their environment. And if you deviate too much away from that, they just don't thrive. They can be classed as going downhill very, very slowly, or they can be classed as static and never actually do that well. But they can be very rewarding if you can get an environment that's right for the particular species. Now, on that note, I've lost most of mine. Coming from where I used to be to here, the move, the change of environment did many of them in. So from that, those of you who've been with the channel long enough can already predict that these tend to be warmer growers. Not all, but many. I won't say most even, actually I will. Most are warmer growers. So they're up the higher end of intermediate into the warm bracket, yeah? So many of them don't like cold. Some of them will not tolerate cold and will die. They will drop their leaves, yeah? So you need to be particular about any of these that you pick up. And before you grab one, because the blooms are quite stunning on many of them, they will catch your eye and you'll walk up and think, oh, I've got to have that. Well, before you do the pretty blooms must have zombie look, check it out. Most are warmer growers. If you can't give it that, then it might be better not to try. But in amongst them are some that are temperature tolerant. I would say the two that I've got left are temperature tolerant, because one of them just keeps on blooming and grows lovely new cane. So it's obviously happy, and I've been here nearly 2 years now, so you know, it's hanging in there, as they say. Anyway, the black hair types, they're not highlight orchids. So medium to bright. Some come from deciduous forests, most don't. Most come from more up the tropical rainforest end, which means they've got a tree canopy, which might have some gaps, but basically you've got that leaf cover. So they're not highlight they haven't got a highlight requirement. Not classed as shady though, although some probably are. If some grow down near the base of a tropical rainforest, low down, they're going to be shadier. The one thing they've virtually all got in common is they like reasonable humidity. The humidity needs to be balanced by your temperatures. Now, if you can maintain 27 to 29 degrees C, then you can have 70 or 80% humidity to go with it. However, if you can only maintain 19 or 20 degrees C in the winter, then you don't want much more than 60, 65, or you start inducing rot. Yeah? Even with some airflow. You've got to balance the two. So if you can maintain higher temperatures, you will need that extra humidity. Yeah? If you can't, then you don't need so much. All of them, I would say, would need an element of airflow, but don't blast them with a fan. Don't have them leaning over like this, you know, in the wind. They won't tolerate that because they haven't got the thick fleshy leaves that some orchids have got. However, they have got reasonably thick leaves. So, right, what else? Some of them are very sensitive to root disturbance. So, with some it is vitally important to only repot when you've got new roots starting, so that any damage that's done to the old root system or existing root system is quickly replaced by the new set of roots. Now some of these, when they grow a new cane, first of all the canes can be pretty big. There's one stood behind me, we'll have a look at in a minute. Some of them are short stubby canes. They vary, again, you know, they vary in size. In shape, and you know, the makeup of them, they don't vary that much. They do have a look about them, so to speak, and their nickname black hair type is based on that. Now if you looked at a mature plant, you'd think, why is this called black hair type? Because often those black hairs are only on new growths and they're gone on older canes, so you know, sometimes it's difficult to tell. I would say the bottom line for looking after these as a generalisation, not species specific, is they like to be warm, in reasonable light, with reasonable humidity, with minimal disturbance at the roots, not too much temperature variation between summer and winter. And therein lies my problem. Because having said that, a lot of them are continuous growers. They come from areas that have a drier season, but it's not dry, it's drier. But the temperature range doesn't change that much. The day length doesn't change that much. So they've got a pretty even range that they live in. And they're happy with that. And they will push up new growths given that environment anytime. They'll bloom almost any time because they have that constant environment. So they bloom when they believe they've got enough strength and built up energy to produce those blooms. And it could be any time of year. So no specific season. But some of these do grow in a more seasonal environment where there is a more distinct drier season. You need to know that, yeah? You also need to know why it's a drier season and the type of forest, because if it's a deciduous forest, then they might like a bit more light in the winter. Not many in this set of orchids have come into that category. Most are rainforest, tropical forest type things, you know, so they've got constant leaf cover and temperatures don't vary that much. I don't normally give specific temperatures for a set of orchids because within them you're going to get variables, but certainly when they're actively growing, these are quite happy with 25 degrees plus. Might get a bit iffy above 28 degrees plus, but they are up that level. They do like that. They'll put up with a bit less, but yeah, good. All right. Mosquito. Sorry, ex-mosquito. It has fallen off the perch. Yes, so if you can, keep them warm. Now I can't. So how have I changed looking after them, and how have I managed to keep a couple going? They don't like my winter, but the two that I've got left are tolerating it and carrying on growing in that winter. So they may come from higher elevations where they're, you know, they've adapted to it. Well, one of them's a hybrid, I don't even know what's in it. I could take a guess because of the blooms, but yeah, so these are not readily available. You can get them from nurseries. Nurseries will stock some. I got many of mine before Brexit, and they came from some private, you know, some came from private sellers. Some have come from nurseries. Occasionally Burnham's might have some. Trey Saunders, which is, I've forgotten the name of his flipping nursery now, but he has some occasionally. So if you wanted to build up a collection of these, it's going to take time. You know, that you come across them now and again, and do check before you go spending lots of money on a species that you're not going to be able to look after very well. Again, know your environment and then look at the orchid and see if it fits in, and if it does, it's probably worth giving a go. Right, where do they come from? Well, they're dendrobiums, so we're not looking at the Americas, we're not looking at Africa, and we're not looking at Europe. We're looking at dendrobiums start in like northern India, foothills of the Himalayas, is it Sikkim, I think there's an area, but around there, and they go right across to China and down through the islands and probably into Australia to a degree, but that would be northern Australia. Don't quote me on that, I'm just sort of thinking that possibly, I'm not sure. But they are mainly, they're Asian orchids basically, and a lot of them are, you know, from the Philippines and all those islands, filling up the gap between Australia and when you get to the sort of mainland again. So, you know, tropical climate, yeah. So there you go. Right, if we look, I'm going to pick up one to have a look at the characteristics, and then I'll have a look at the other one that's got a bloom on it to have a look at. Right, that means my coffee's going to get cold, of course. Yeah, can I get this one out without knocking stuff over? Possibly. Now this is quite a good example to show you all that can be, because it's got old and new. I've had this one a while now. It is a hybrid. I don't know what it's called. I will put a pop-up of the blooms. They are stunning, and it's been doing them quite frequently. If you look here, we have a totally leafless cane, yeah, so they do go deciduous eventually, yeah. And we have another totally leafless cane over here. So on this orchid I have two. Why have I left them there? Because they are fat and strong and therefore are still storing some energy. They also have, strangely enough, some roots coming out at the base. So that's how the canes end up. Yeah, oh, in fact there's three. There's another one round here strapped in. Right, so the next stage obviously is new growths, and we'll look at what comes in between. So that's how they end up. This is what they look like when they're growing. Yeah, so you've got nice new growth, roots come out at the base, the leaves tend to start quite low down the cane and are alternate, yeah? And they tend to have larger leaves towards the top, and they tend to have a good cluster of leaves at the top. They do a terminal leaf when they finish growing. There's another cane over here. This is the larger one of the two. And this cane is going to be larger than, well, already is larger than anything else on the plant, and is still growing. So this one's going to get taller. But the leaves are starting to cluster near the top. So it may not be going to get too much taller. But you can see the difference in the height. Yeah? This one is a good 4 inches taller than anything else and is still growing. And then you get what's in between. What's in between are previous canes. Again, alternate leaves, cluster of leaves at the top, and flower buds. So you can see the flower buds tend to cluster at the top of the cane. If you look at this cane here, that had a single flower bud, but then when that cane bloomed, that was quite a young cane. How do I know? Because it's becoming deciduous. The leaves are going to be gone soon, so that'll be the next one to be leafless. Followed by this one over here. Yeah, this one's due in autumn. I'll help it because it spoils the look. They don't necessarily fall off in any particular order. They just go. They start turning yellow and then they end up on the floor if you leave them alone. If you help them, then keeps the plant tidy. Don't tear leaves off of canes on dendrobiums. If you're going to take them off because you really don't want that leaf there anymore, then trim it close to the stem, and the stump that you leave will fall off on its own when it's good and ready. When they fall off on their own, because they're good and ready, they will have calloused over beneath that join, which means they're sealed. There's no room for infections and things to get in. Right, black hair. If you look on the old deciduous canes with no leaves, there are no hairs on those canes. If you look on an older one, like this one, virtually nothing to see. But if you come round to the new ones, you'll see a sheen. Hopefully you can see it. Let me get out of the way and let a bit more light in. And it is a sheen. The hairs on these canes are minute, but they're there. If you get a magnifying glass and look at them, you can see them distinctly. They are tiny, and there are thousands of them. And they give it a sheen, like a coloration, I suppose you could call it. So that's the basic makeup. Blooms do tend to come at or near the top of the cane on most, but on some they can come part way down the cane, and on some they can come almost anywhere on the cane, but most of them come near the top of the cane. Right, so that's a hybrid. We've had a look at that one. Now I'm going to actually put that back where it goes. Let's get it. I have to line these things up so that I can let go with one hand and make sure it doesn't touch anything else. Things are a bit precarious at the moment because they've all been set up for the lights. Some of them are touching other plants, and when you get a big strong cane like that sticking out, which is a nuisance because that now takes up a lot more space, but it's too late to think about strapping that one upright. It would just snap. So I'm stuck with that now. I should have put a cane on it earlier. Right. So as far as my lights are concerned, that is under the lights. It's not closely under the lights. It gets the edge of the, all the lights form a beam of some sort. It's on the edge, so it gets some extra light. The idea being that because they don't like the cooler temperatures that I'm now into, at least I keep the day length there. in the hope that it can keep ticking over and those growths won't stall. They will continue to grow. Right, that's that one. Then the other one I've got is even bigger, and this is in flower. This is often in flower. I like to say that because it's one to watch out for if you've got the space. I'll say the space because it's more the height. Now again, because I've had this one a while, it's got everything going on. We have, first of all, we need to do how big it is. There's the pot. I shouldn't be bent over like this, but there you go. It's a tall plant. I would say the tallest cane on there is over 2/3 of a metre. It's not a metre, but it's heading up that way. Right, so again, we've got deciduous canes. These are older canes because they're smaller for a start, and they haven't bloomed, although that one did once, and they've lost their leaves. So they are ex-canes. Now on this plant, this cane could be cut off because it's shriveled. It's not doing any good. This one's still got some substance to it. This one over here is doing autumn, so it is dropping its leaves now. They're not going to be there much longer. And then we've got this tall one here, which if you look has bloomed rather a lot. You look at the number of buds up here, in here, in here, and possibly I'm going to do another one here, and possibly another one here. Now that's a good 8 inches from the top of the cane. If it does, that'll be the first time it's done that. Yeah? And then another older one here. And then here we have the previous growth, because we haven't got to the latest one yet. So this is the previous cane, pushed up to there. It currently has buds on it, and oh, I thought that was a mealybug, perhaps not. And it also has buds part way down the cane. There's 2 buds there, and that is about 6 inches from the top of the cane. Right, again, leaves most of the way down, and black hair still on the stem, even though that's not the latest growth. And then round here, we have the latest growth. That is still growing, no terminal leaf yet. And the black hairs on these new growths are very apparent on the opposite side of the leaf joint. They form a dark band. Yeah? So that's what they look like. If you look at the base of the plant, the black hairs down here are so thick they're like fur on this one. Yeah? And they thin out a bit as it goes up the cane. So that's sort of what they look like. This is a species, this is Dendrobium infundibulum. Now it also has what I would call a typical bloom for this type, but they do vary. There are some very, very different blooms within this set, but out of the large white ones, this is the only one I've managed to keep going any length of time. Now there's one that looks incredibly similar called Dendrobium formosum, and I've had 3 of those and all 3 of them have died. They will not grow for me, and yet to look at the plants they look identical, but it wants that warmer temperature. This one is more temperature tolerant. Blooms are quite large, pristine white with that lovely gold centre. Yeah. And another one just opening there, plus as I say we've got 2 down here, and we've got signs of buds in other places on other canes as well. So this one does quite well for me. Had it a while now, and it blooms on and off all the time. Oh. Now the other thing you need to know about those is, in the main, certainly with the large whites, they last ages, 2 to 3 months, but not many of them have got any fragrance, so you sacrifice some longevity, fragrance for longevity. But there are quite a few in this group of orchids that are very, very long-lasting flowers. That makes them worthwhile to me. As I venture into new orchids now, in the dendrobium range, I'm not getting any more of the type of dendrobiums that bloom once a year and the blooms don't last long. They're too much effort, and often those are winter resters as well. That's another requested video. That'll be one of the ones down the road. But they take a fair bit of effort, and in the big scheme of things, for often little reward. So I won't be getting any more of those. Those I've got, I'd like to keep going. Don't want to lose any more. We've lost a lot already over the last couple of months. So there we go, black hair types. Not easily, you don't come across them very often. You'd have to go looking. They're not just going to turn up in a bunch of Phalaenopsis and Oncidium types at a local store or something. You'd be very lucky if they did, and if they did, I'd grab it. As a consequence, they also can be expensive, but I find them rewarding, and I regret the ones I've lost. There were some smashers in amongst the ones that I've lost. But, as I said, they're up the warmer end, and I don't have the luxury of maintaining those temperatures anymore. So there we go. That's the first of a set. I will try and stick to do these videos on a weekly basis on a Wednesday. So they will be, the Wednesday video will be a viewer's requested video, providing I've got some requests. Requests for a video can come in any time, but on the viewer's requested video is a good place to put in the comments another one that you would like to see. It keeps them tidy from my point of view. I've made a list of the ones I've got so far, which is 5, one of which I've done now, so it's not a lot, but it's over a month's worth, and hopefully more will come in and extend the length of time we can go on. But I can only do it if the requests keep coming in, and you like this sort of thing. Now this is going to be a little bit like the project orchids. There are going to be times when, like now, black hair type dendrobiums. If you haven't got any and have no intention of getting any, would this video be of interest to you? Probably not so much. Yeah. So it may have limited viewing. We shall see. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't want this channel to be pretty blooms, let's look. There's more than enough of those channels around. People who like to show their blooms and have enough of them to be able to, video regularly and that sort of thing. There's plenty of those around. I'd like mine to be a little more informative. Yeah, and I mean, I've got a reasonable variety of orchid types. So we've got different types of blooms to look at as the year progresses. The environment has changed dramatically, and strictly speaking is still changing because I've got the lights up. Well, how I use them right through till sort of March, April time, including a period where I might not use them at all, it's still changing. This environment is still not settled into an annual cycle. I haven't quite got there yet, but we're getting there. Right, so that's the first of hopefully many, and hopefully they're enjoyable type videos. Leave your comments, say what you think, as always, and in addition to that, if you have any ideas, what I'm doing is if the same idea comes in from a second person, both would get the name check, and it pushes it up to the front of the list a bit more if more people request the same sort of thing, you know, so we shall see. Right, have we got a joke? Brain, come on. Yes, yes. This is not from, this is, when did I hear? Oh, I forget when I heard this, but it tickled me. It's a setup that I would never be in for a start, so you can tell it's a story, not a true thing. So I'll pretend it's me and it's an environment that I would not be in unless it was a wedding or a funeral. Seriously, I would not be there. Right, so I was in church. Basically, I was sitting behind this lovely old couple, yeah, and obviously apart from the bloke in the frock up the front spouting off, which could be a lady nowadays, we like that. Anyway, apart from that, obviously it's quiet, isn't it? We're not doing the standing up and sitting down and singing and all that stuff. So anyway, lovely old couple sat in front. And the lady leans across and whispers, "I've just very, 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 very quietly broken wind. What should I do?" And the gentleman looks over and says, "Well, the first thing you need to do is replace the batteries in your hearing aid." Tickled me. See you next time. Thanks for dropping by.